registration or you know, the strongest measurement that you've had in 10 years where everything was, other entities were linking across to this, and that there's going to be waves of bankruptcies, and of course the unemployment, which is already bad enough, is going to get worse. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, as part of the dollar dying, because it's going to die from the outer empire inward, we're going to see impacts that will probably bring hyperinflation. So from this November onward, we're going to see a period of time where, in spite of the fact that oil might be getting cheaper for the rest of the planet, it would get more expensive for us because no one wants to take the dollar anymore and they're unwilling to ship goods to us. We're actually seeing this in reality now, as there's thousands of ships off the South China Sea that are just anchored because they're not bringing stuff to the U.S. anymore because we're just not buying. And no one wants our dollar even if we could buy it. So that's going to start off, and then the dollar pressure across the rest of the United States in terms of the social infrastructure is going to start exhibiting some strange effects. It'll reduce the number of people that are working down to basically just government. And even those people will find themselves in a kind of an interesting position as we get into hyperinflation. This is a period of transformation, we've labeled it. And this transformation, when it hit Germany in the Weimar years, took Germany into the Nazi years of Hitler as a result of transforming them through the huge crash of their currency. So there is a real potential for us to repeat those same kind of mistakes and end up as a really bunch of nasty, fascists, simply because we'll be subjected to the same sorts of stress. And it's going to be quite dire. If you really want a picture of what we're going to have to go through, then you need to read up on the Weimar Republic years of Germany.
Yeah, and I've done a little reading on that. I've seen that obviously you go through all the economic upheavals, and even beyond that, the commentary of some of the authors was the effect that it left the people demoralized because they found out that their savings, of course, were vaporized by the hyperinflation. And they had tried to live their life according to the rules, so to speak, and then found out they were completely destroyed as a result of that.
Yes, we have an interesting wrinkle to that didn't exist at the time that may pull us out of the otherwise planned march into fascism. Bear in mind, the powers that be will use periods like this to try and move us in mass the way they want. But you're quite right. The demoralization of the people at the time in Germany was really what led them into the position of being able to be rebuilt, so to speak, as a unified nation under Hitler, because he spoke to them and got them in not from an economic viewpoint, but rather from that deep core human level of what it was like to be Germanic. Now, we're going to face kind of the same situation relative to the dollar dying and all those same kinds of pressures, but we have an interesting little wrinkle here. And that is that our data suggests that as the government starts to coagulate or shrink down relative to the amount of money it can spend, as most of the rest of the nation goes into unemployment and hyperinflation, some of the barriers that are between us and what the shadow government holds secret are going to fall. And some of those secrets may come out in time in order to radically change our paradigm and kick us all into an entirely new view of the future and where we will fit into it. It's quite probable at some level, I don't know, it's certainly possible, but the level of probability we could assign a number, but it probably would just be speculation. But it is probable that the government won't be able to maintain the secrecy apparatus because it won't be able to afford it. Okay. And the real thing about secrets is that they're all interrelated. So once they start coming out at the periphery, they're going to just basically tunnel right into the core, and there's nothing that the government or the officialdom can do about it. In spite of the fact that we've got one of the greatest secrecy structures on the planet, the sheer mass of the things that they're keeping secret works against them under times that we're about to face. So it may be that for instance, we find out that, oh, geez, the United States, the populace here has been paying for and refining free energy and anti-gravity since the 1950s. And, now's the time we can let it loose. That stuff has some possibility of, or some level of probability of occurring.
So what does this be like, leaks out through the internet of disaffected individuals? Or
some of that, but also we're going to face a really nasty period of time where we have food riots here in the United States.
Okay.
The situation on the planet is not good. We've got a collapsing biosphere for the planet as a whole, an unstable environment. That instability is not generated by us, and I doubt it's even aggravated by us, but it's certainly going to affect us, and it already has. If you look at things from the way that Buckminster Fuller, for instance, and other aggregators of information look at them, we're in the 8th year of a collapsing food chain, where we're having less grain output every year than the year before. Past year has been very bad for the production of food and of all different kinds. This food problem is going to actually get to the point where, combined with the death of the dollar, we're going to have starvation and potential famine here in the United States. Some of our data suggests that during food riots, some areas of what is now nominally in the control of the U.S. government and actually is owned and paid for and controlled by the shadow government behind our government, some of these areas are going to be looted because people will think they're vast storehouses of food. And instead they won't find food, but they'll release some of this other information, and once that process starts, there you go.
They'll find vast warehouses full of file cabinets.
Well, not necessarily even that. Who knows? Maybe a big hole in the ground with a couple of spaceships, for all I know. But what we do know is that they're underground, and they'll be rather shocked. But again, once it hits the internet, then it's there for everyone, and it starts this process going.
Interesting. One question that we've had asked here is there any data concerning higher education? What's going to happen, I guess, to our education system, or changes, effects of this on that?
Well, we're actually, from my viewpoint, and I'll be real cynical here, the collapse of the dollar will allow us to have an educational system instead of a school system. And there's a big difference between the two. The higher education system, that is to say, higher education, in my opinion, is only self-directed now. Anything coming out of a school system is limited to how academia wishes you to believe. And anything that's guided by a peer review system is obviously demanded to begin with, because it allows the least among us to regulate what is allowed within everybody's purview. So, but at the moment, what they're probably asking about is relative to the K through 12 situation. How are we going to deal with that? And as part of the dollar collapse, the university structures as we have them now will collapse at the very beginning of this process. So if we get into really heavy dollar collapse, say in March of next year, then I would suspect just before March we'd start seeing universities in dire need, shutting doors, can't get funding, being on their knees with the federal government, desperate for bailouts. But it won't matter at that stage, because we'll have hit hyperinflation and they won't be able to print the money fast enough. So
will they begin to print the money as a way of trying to desperately patch it together, and then it just gets to the point where it becomes the dollars become worthless? Is that how you see it unwinding? In other words,
that's already happened, actually. I mean, you have to think about it that way. They printed trillions of digital dollars and handed them out right and left, and nothing has improved. There's been a bunch of happy talk that's going to go away here real quick. Once the happy talk is gone, the despair is going to settle in, and then the actual real repercussions come from that. We already have tens of thousands of people that used to be students that can't get student aid or loans and can't continue. The stress is being felt everywhere. To think otherwise means you're simply not paying attention.
Cliff, we need to take a short commercial break, and we'll be right back here momentarily.
That's fine.